And it's recording, and hello! Welcome to the third dev stream that is focusing on the content of Lyra's Guide to Retia and the Risk and Reward books, available currently for pre-order. If you'd like to get in, there's a link at the top of the screen. We are talking about the 5.19 edition rule set and setting guide made by Nat19, written by myself, with the help of many wonderful artists, and kickstarted successfully by all of you, to allow us to open up our setting and rule set to be used by us and others who wish to use it. This is the third dev stream. Today we're going to be talking about the races that we made, the revision to the race system, which included a recreation of most of the races in D&D, as well as the addition of many, many, many new ones. We have a special system called the Legacy Trait System that allows for great customizability with races in the 5.19 system. Which basically sought to eliminate the need for half races like the half-orc and half-elf, and just open up half races, mixed blood races, and greater customizability during character creation to everyone. Also, to push my anti-dark vision agenda. You want dark vision? Pick it. Take it as a thing that you make during character creation. Too many people see in the dark. Make the dark more interesting. But, that all said, people will be in the stream submitting questions at home. They'll be submitting questions via the AMA, like in our previous streams. I will be answering them. We're going to start by, I'm going to try to answer some general questions from the AMA redeems, and then we are going to move on to looking at the system generally, and we're going to talk about how to build creatures circa your race in the 5.19 system. Alrighty, so let's get right into answering some of these questions. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doo. I'm gonna save a couple of them. I'm gonna do a quick... Let's say I'll do 5. We're gonna do 5 questions. Not necessarily in order of when they were asked. Yo, how do you say Naruto? No, it's Narutos. There's an S at the end. And it's Narutos. Boom. Alright. There's a frame built question that looks a bit extensive. I'll save that for later. Okay, this one's good. Why did you pick to keep races like the Goliath and Firbolg over races like Bugbear and Loxodon or any of the other 5e races? So, as has been talked about on previous streams, and as people that keep up with Nat19's actual play streams knows very well, when we began to make this conversion, around the time of the OGL scandal that happened a while back, we started separating ourselves from the trademarked races and intellectual property of Wizards of the Coast, because we wanted the setting to survive on its own merits, and that just sort of steamrolled into being the entire 5.19 system. Part of this meant we replaced things like the Tieflings and the Aasimar and other things that were distinctly Wizards of the Coast owned. We replaced those with new iterations. However, in all the cases we did this, we didn't just rebrand it, we didn't just rename it. Though you can tell that they are supposed to harken back to the originals, their replacements, such as the Hadaslin for the Tiefling, the Narutos for the Aasimar, we took the opportunity to make them into something completely new, to expand the idea, to break free from some of the limitations that people put on them in other settings. After all, they are our versions. So we opened them up, which I tried to really push with some of the art, such as showing that our Dragonkin, as opposed to Dragonborn, can have tails and wings and such. Gonna turn my little fan on. And also the Hadaslins can be far more demonic, and as they get older they become more fiendish. We tried to expand on those. But the question was, why did we keep things like the Goliath and Firbolg over the Bugbear and Loxodon? The Loxodon is distinctly owned by WotC. The answer to that one is like, that just, you can tell by that name, that is intellectual property. Whereas Goliaths and Firbolgs in concept, they're not owned, like they're not intellectual property owned by WotC. You can understand that if someone says Goliath to you, you're gonna basically understand what you're talking about. Same with Firbolg. You'll actually notice that in the guide, apart from their somewhat druidic nature, our Firbolgs actually are quite different from traditional Firbolgs. They far more lean into the giant kin. They're furry. They're more like the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. So we sort of, like with everything we kept, we sort of took the idea and went a bit lateral to it. The Bugbear, I just didn't have any interest in converting that race for this particular thing because we already hit like 40 races, and there's just only so much that I could see us doing with the amount of space and time we had, and it already got to be so much. So there'll probably be a version of that, although with the Bugbear, that is so distinctly Wizards of the Coast that I might have to review whether or not I'd want to keep that name. Similarly to, like, how when we do the Spelljammer equivalent, our exolunar space stuff, we can't use the Gith. We're not using the Githyanki. But there will be a mimetic equivalent that if you were playing a Forgotten Realms game, wanted to use our system, there will be stuff in there that you could look at and be like, okay, well, this is meant to be the Githyanki. In concept, I can build what the Githyanki would have been and call it that. It's kind of intended that you can slap the old labels back on stuff and roughly be like, cool, done, good, yes. I can check this. Good, good, good. So that's my explanation as to why not other 5e races. There's just only... If we did every race that had been released in every supplement, the book would have gotten even further out of hand than it did. Alright, 3 more! Why did you choose to rename some of the old 5e races like Hadaslin or Primordia or Inaritos? I guess I kind of just answered that, didn't I? Because we wanted them to be our own thing, because we wanted to be conceptually divergent and move to the side of those races. So we wanted to make them our thing. By the way, in today's thing, I'm going to focus on a couple of those to show the differences. Probably the Primordia and the Hadaslin. We'll probably take a quick look at those. But I wanted to be divergent from their original ideas and give them their own identity while still making it clear that they could be used for what the original was. But the thing is, the Tieflings, Ganassi's, Aasimar, the renames ultimately started as just, those are distinctly WotC IPs. And when the OGL scandal was happening, we wanted to be aware that if Hasbro or Wizards ever decided to go nuclear in the future, we wanted to have as little of their DNA in our work as possible. We want to get to a point where we could, in effect, make our entirely separate TTRPG system and keep most of the same iconography and have it not just feel like a sidestep from D&D. We want it to feel like its own thing, which is why we're not pretending that like the Somnus Domina is like the realms in the future anymore. Now it's a nebulous thing where it's like, no, it was never the realms, it's not the realms. That was kind of just a mechanism we used to get people able to get into it. Now we're just being like, it's its own setting with its own rules, its own cosmology, its own gods, its own system of divinity, and so on and so forth. Enough that in our Discord I do frequently find I have to sorta, when people say like, well, gods work this way in the Forgotten Realms, so I assume it happens over here, I am kind of here being like, you shouldn't assume that. This is a different place. Yeah, you should use evidence only present here. Especially with the whole renown and worship grants God's power thing. We don't do that in Somnus Domina. But I digress. This is my brain tangenting. Let's not do that. I'm also going to switch up the music to get something kinda... Yeah. Bring my energy levels down. Be laid back, Laidlaw. Let's see. Somewhat off of the theme, but how would you decide what features you would consider most important to make them feel like they were one of the classes or races when creating an NPC based off them? I mean, every race ultimately only has like 3 or 4 proper traits between their subrace and their like core race that goes down to it. If you want to make... NPCs are always reductive. NPCs usually can't do all of the things that the equivalent race in a PC can do just because it's too much to manage. So like, if you make a gnome, and I'm like Morlane from Gilligan's Grave, he had basically the turning invisible and the quick heal features. Those were the 2 main things I gave him because in combat, those are the things that would come up. Those are the things that would serve a mechanical purpose. Everything else, in my opinion, if you want to just remember that, like, gnomes and halflings, like, yeah, they got stuff that happens when they're small. You don't really need to write that on their sheet. Just remember it when it applies. I'd say pick a couple actionable things from the race and put those in an NPC if you have to. but I've always considered making NPCs to be a game of keeping in only what you think you're going to use, otherwise you'll create a bloated stat block and you'll forget what you should use. Alright, one more, and then we'll get into the actual content. Now I see a lot of questions coming in, that's pretty cool. This one's going to be a lot. Let's try this again. As someone who doesn't have the book, I'm interested in, when it comes to mixed lineages, is it going to be an overarching thing for a half-race type? Or is it a grab bag? I'm going to assume that's asking what we're doing with mixed lineages, with like the half-orc and the half-elf. And the answer is they no longer exist, because the legacy trait system was built to allow you to cross over basically everything. So those basically no longer exist. There is no need for the half-orc or the half-elf to exist, because you can just have mixed blood things constantly. So with that, actually, I think that's a good point to maybe actually open up the book, kaboom, and take a look at exactly how these things work. So. If anyone wants to, commenting on this video on YouTube, wants to put a timestamp here for Logan quits yapping and starts talking about the book, feel free to include that. Alright, so the book, all of the content of the book, woo! It's crazy that like all of this is just setting stuff. God, there's so much in this book. It's crazy to think that this was just my brain for 2 years. I mean, for longer than that, but like codifying it, just, there we go. No, we're still in setting stuff. And I could just use the bookmarks, I guess, if I was a smart lad. You know what? Let's just use the bookmarks. Where are you? Races. So, boop. The section, our race section in the book starts off with a recap of various things, such as different types of sight, as we understand them, because we wanted to recodify a couple things. And this is important to just understand character creation in the 5.19 system in general. For example, expertise is now a codified mechanic. Most features that gave expertise had to fully revisit in text what expertise did. So, like, we wanted to just be like, if we say expertise, it is this. Also, you can, in the 5.19 system, have expertise without proficiency. You can gain expertise and proficiency separately for the purposes of if something gives you expertise, you might have that, and getting proficiency later as well basically gives you what old expertise was. I know that sounds confusing. It has its benefits. It means that you can build up towards things. Then there's the various sites. We recap how we understand them and write them, and we'll use them. So they're all there. Here we go. Start of the actual races section. So, first thing that I want to go over is if you're making a character within our system, and you're doing some people like the ability score increase, gain 2 in one stat, 1 in another stat. Some people like doing that. Some people like just being like, here's 3 points. So we offer options for both, depending on what do you want to do. We allow people to choose which one they want to do based on their table. We don't use the term lineages, which I know a lot of people are married to and they really like, but I've just personally, from a design point of view, never seen the utility of calling them lineages over like races and subraces. So we just use the old race-subrace dichotomy. One other notable thing that should be considered is that in our system, if you have the more like bestial non-humanoid creature types, like whatnot, if you're a dragonkin, you will have dragon as a creature type. So things that affect dragons affect you. We just think that extra layer is fun. A lot of tables with newer people tend to play it that way anyways. A lot of them are like, yeah, well, I mean, Arrow of Dragon Slaying, he's a dragonborn, right? So it should work. And that's usually a place where Rule of Cool comes in. So we kind of just were like, yeah, no, you get an extra creature type. Sometimes it matters, like if you're a Frame Built or a Vanquished, then you'll be a Construct or an Undead, right? So certain spells interact with it differently, and I find that those interactions make for an interesting dynamic whenever you're like trying to heal somebody and you can't, so you have to find creative ways to do it and whatnot. So just keep in mind that a lot of the races add extra creature types. And at any time an effect or ability considers one of those creature types, you are considered to be all of them. So for example, Cure Wounds cannot cure undead. So if you are undead as well as other things, but because it cannot heal the undead, it cannot heal you. So you are always whichever one matters in relation to an ability. One of the questions that I saw asked was about the mixed blood characters, and that ties into the main thing, the main reason why we rebuilt races, which is the legacy trait system. In short, the legacy trait system is that every race has its core traits. You gain those traits automatically when you take them. Those are the ones that are listed under the trait section for each character in the book. Then there is a legacy trait section, which has 6 traits that whenever you're making your character, you pick 2 of them, and you get those. So you always get to customize within your race a little bit, and these are separate from your subrace. Your subrace then gives you however many features it has. However, the way that this expands out is that if you want to make a character and you're like, I want them to be part human, part kobold, let's say, then the way that you go about it is you pick which one of them is your primary race. So which one of them is effectively the main one. This can mean a lot of things. It's up to you to determine what that means in character. But you have a primary race and a secondary. You are considered to be both. So if you are a primary human, secondary kobold, if anything ever says it targets kobolds or humans, it targets both. Both are you. But you will be primarily human, and the idea there is that most of your physical attributes probably come from it, like your age range, your size range, and whatnot. They're probably coming from the primary. But once you've picked that, you then pick a subrace from your primary race, not from your secondary. So you pick a race, that's your primary, you pick a subrace from that one, and then the entire point of having a secondary race is that those 2 legacy traits that I mentioned that you get to pick from the list of either of those races. There's been a bit of confusion I've seen in playtesting. I don't think it's a wording issue. I think it's maybe people skimming, perhaps, or just having their own reading quirks. I think it's made relatively clear, but, where is it? It's written in here. Everything I'm saying is basically on this page, just by the by. So you pick 2 collectively from both races. So if you're a human and a kobold, when you're picking your legacy traits, you can pick from the 6 human legacy traits or the 6 kobold legacy traits, or one from both. But you only get 2. Taking a secondary race, and this is the thing people have been confused about, does not give you extra ones. You have 2, collectively. And that's it. And by doing this, you can talk to your GM and be like, well, can I take like the age range of the kobold or whatnot, and like have different aesthetics between them. But this eliminates the need for half races, because you can just be like, I am primarily an elf, secondarily a human, I have created the half-elf, and you can go from there. But it leaves you open to experimenting and customizing and building your own. And I'll get into examples of exactly and it's basically that. That's effectively the long and short of it when you're doing it. If you're not doing mixed blood, pick your race, pick 2 legacy traits, pick a subrace. If you are doing a mixed blood character, pick a race, pick a subrace for that primary race, pick a secondary race, and then 2 legacy traits from either of their lists. Again, these are the races that are included in the guide, as well as a column that talks about what creature type is added to you in addition. So, like, Beast Tribe would be humanoid and beast, and Beast Tribe. Those would be, like, the creature types you have. Some of these are umbrellas, like Beast Tribe is a bit of an umbrella, Bird Folk is a bit of an umbrella. Some of them are like, it's not meant to be thought of as a singular race or species. It's meant to be, this is an umbrella under which all of them can fall mechanically to make things easier and not have us have to flesh out, like, an extra dozen races. But, there are some that are exceptions to the legacy trait system, the mixed blood system. There are some listed in here that cannot mix for one reason or another. Maybe they're oh, I got like a bubble in my nose. There's some that, for example, they might both be plane touched, and so their aspects can't merge together, so you have to... I got fucking... There's my instinct to answer the chat going off, and I gotta ignore it. Where was I? I lost my train of thought. Some of them can't feasibly be mixed blood by... Yeah, all the races have legacy traits. Some of them can't feasibly be mixed. For example, frame built, which are... They do not frame built and Nephilim do not reproduce biologically. They do not give birth, so there's no genetic diversity in there. So technically, they could never be mixed blood. But we leave it up to you guys. We include mixed blood traits and legacy traits and whatnot for them, so that if your table wants to be like, well, I'm a human, but I'm gonna play a primary human, secondary frame built, and the idea is like I'm Edward Elric, and I have a frame built arm that was grafted onto me, you might be like, cool, that means it's your secondary race, and you pick a legacy trait, and it represents that. We leave it up. We don't have the mechanics slam a door down in front of that. We leave the mixed blood mechanics in for those, so that if you have a creative idea, you can still facilitate it. With that, the races that are included are Archoons, Beast Tribes, Birdfolk, Capihado, Dragonkin, Dwarves, Elves, and Narutos. Narutos are effectively the Aasimar. You know what? I'm going to start over and go over a couple of the replacements. Archoon, Beast Tribe, Birdfolk, which Birdfolk is an umbrella under which, like, the Kenku and whatnot would fall. Dragonkin effectively is a replacement for Dragonborn. Dwarf Elf in Narutos, which is effectively a replacement for the Aasimar. Feralus, which is effectively a replacement for the Tabaxi. Firbolg, Fluflin, Frame Built, which is effectively kind of a replacement for the Warforged, but I gotta be honest, not really. It's conceptually so different from them. Gnome, Goblin, Goliath, Hadaslin. Hadaslins are effectively a replacement for the Tieflings and other fiendish races. Halfling, Hanyo, Hobgoblin, Human, Ilthrak Yar, Kaijo, Kitsadria, Kobold, Kuahono, and Kuahono is an umbrella under which marine life and reptiles tend to fall. You'll find, like, the turtles and whatnot are represented under that. Merfolk, which are Tritons, but called something less lateral. Minotaurs, Nephilim, Orc. Point of interest, Nephilim are not celestial. Oh, it comes up all the time. I'll say it every time I can so people remember. Nephilim, not celestial. Orcs, Petratara, Primordia. Primordia are effectively a replacement for the Ganassi, but they are more of a general elemental touch race rather than being specifically what they were. Tarnished, which are wholesale a replacement for the Feyri. Trialtin, and Vanquished. Vanquished being an umbrella for undead that have the sapience necessary to be a PC or NPC, such as the Dompiers go under the Vanquished and whatnot, but it also includes things like living skeletons, Frankenstein's monsters sort of creatures, ghosts possessing bodies they can't get out of, all that kind of stuff. Oh my god, my nose. But. With those, let's look at any particular race. You know what? Let's be silly little guys about this. So these are the reincarnation tables that we include at the end of the guide. For people who want to use the reincarnate spell, I guess I can just go over these now. Whenever you roll to reincarnate using the 5.19 stuff, at least with this book, you would roll a d100 to determine the race, and then there's another table for the subrace, so you can quickly determine both of them, which, if I recall, the original reincarnate table doesn't account for subraces. There's also an extra rule in here to account for if you want to leave the option open that you might reincarnate into a mixed blood character, which again is a creative way you might stumble into something mixed with something that shouldn't be mixed with. I am going to step aside. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to step aside, get over here. I'm going to grab this and this. And we're going to leave it up to fate to a roll of a percentile die to determine what race we're going to look at as we're looking at legacy traits. That is a 46. That is... Oh, the Cassandra is cheating. We've spent so much time with them. I'm going to do it again. Hey, Scylla, how you doing? 46 again? That's like a 1 in 10,000 chance that I would roll the exact same thing twice. Oh my god. 47. Are you just weighted to be a 40? One second. Oh, my nose is being so weird. I apologize if I sound nasally or anything today. Well, you know what? 47 kobolds. So let's do that. Kobold. Alright, kobolds. Cool little guys. Look at him. That axe is way too big for him, and that's the fun of it. So, one thing that we try to include at the start of each, I'm going to change the music to take a little bit of boom. Let's be a little more celebratory with the music. I don't know if it's allergies. I don't think I have allergies, but man, what do I know? We include this little breakdown at the start of each. We had people, initially we weren't going to include them, but we had people that really wanted, I'll zoom in a little bit so this is easier to see. Hold on. There. We had people who initially said they would find it convenient if there was height ranges. So if you want to randomly determine your height based on which size category you pick, you can. The rest of this gives general information about life expectancy, what creature types you have, what planes the creature might be a part of. The Arthanary is a plane unique to our setting that is based around dragons, for example. Talks about if they're plane touched, which has a lot to do about if two creatures are plane touched, in theory they shouldn't mix, because that's like an influence, and one influence should beat out the other. But again, if you want to ignore that, you can ignore that. Talks about their life expectancy, political alignment within our setting, if you're using our setting wholesale. But we go down here. I'm gonna unzoom real quick. Tell you what, I'm gonna move my reactive out of the way a little. Get out of the way, reactive. Give us a little more room to work with. Yeah. So, as mentioned, the ability score increase. Every race has one ability that they get a +2 in overall, and then the subrace gives you a +1 in one other. I'm going to be compressing this text in future books, but this just basically goes out of its way to tell you if you don't want to use that, then just do one of these options. The base traits for the kobold are all as you can see here. There's your usual stuff. There's their age, which talks about when they reach maturity and how old they usually live to if allowed to live to old age. Alignment, which I know a lot of people have kind of moved on from using alignment, but it's not that hard for us to include it, so we do. Totally fair if you don't want to use alignment. That does make the favorite soul a bit harder, but I guess maybe you would just use it specifically in that case. Kobold gets dark vision. We included just a little bit of extra text about how they often see with their dark vision, so that you have an idea. And then the kobold for these three are basically the kobold traits. Every race tends to get 3 to 4 things that they all have that are good. Dodgy behavior. Oh, there's a typo here. Yeah, it should say kobolds are. Oh, again, good to review. The kobold, for example, they have dark vision up to 60 feet. They have dodgy behavior, which lets them take the disengage action as a bonus action, and when they do, their movement speed increases by 10 feet that turn, so they get away real quick. And exploitation tactics, when you make an attack against a creature while they are within the melee reach of one of your allies who isn't incapacitated, that attack is advantage. You can do that a number of times per long rest equal to prof bonus. Another sidebar, I have taken to changing pack tactics to include the text if the target is within melee reach of another creature, because I think that that's more future-proofed. I think pack tactics is fine, but I think that if you have like a creature who's huge and has like a 10-foot range, I kind of think they should be able to run interference too. So that text you'll find more and more in our stuff when pack tactics comes up. So they basically have pack tactics that they can use to get advantage a number of times per long rest equal to prof bonus. Most races have with recharge abilities. Most of them recharge on long rests. Then the legacy traits, which are from here to here. Climber, Crafty Interest, Dasher, General Jack, Ravager, and Sliding Escape. When you're making your character, you would get to pick 2 of these. If you were a mixed blood character, then you would also be able to choose from the 6 on the list for the other race, but you still only get a total of 2. Every one of them also has a little section here called mixed blood traits. If Kobold was your secondary trait, you can choose Bloodline, Dodgy Behavior, or Size option as legacy traits. Those just kind of let you opt into certain base traits. Like you're like, I want to be small, like a Kobold, or I want the Dodgy Behavior feature, or I want one of the subrace features. And we specifically allow different subrace features to be used so that usually the most powerful of the subrace's features are not included here. Usually it's like the most general utility one. That way you can't just like take the best of 2 races, but it still gives you like a little bit of a choice, a little bit of a representation from the subraces. That said, you would pick 2 of these, so like Climber, Crafty Interest, Dasher, General Jack. Climber being you have a climb speed equal to your base movement speed. Crafty Interest, you are proficient in 2 skills of your choice. Dasher, you can take the dash action as a bonus action. General Jack, choose 2 ability scores. When you make checks and saves using them, you add half your proficiency bonus to the result, unless another feature would do this or add it a second time. This text appears on a lot of features, which is why the text is future-proofed against itself, so you can't just stack a bunch of these onto themselves. If something's already adding that your proficiency bonus an extra time, then you don't get to do this. Ravager, you possess sharpened claws, granting your unarmed strikes and attacks made using your hands or claws a +2 bonus to attack rolls. See that? If you had a mixed blood character who was, let's say, also Dragonkin, and you had natural weapons from that, it would be cool to stack this on top of the natural weapons of that to get kind of like neat, cool extra claws, you know? Like better claws. And Sliding Escape. When you take the dash or disengage action, you can move through the spaces of creatures of the same size or larger than you without taking any penalty to your movement speed, as long as your movement ends in an unoccupied space. So you get to pick 2 of those 6, and then we move on to the subraces, which for some races, the subrace gallery is a bit more colorful. For others, it was very much going down a list of being like, okay, here's the ones that come from the underrealms. Here's the ones that come from swamps. Because with some species and races, you can't really be like, here are the chosen angel kobolds. Or you can, but it would have been really weird to have that over too much of it. So, but the Greatkin kobolds, heckin' are ones that have like draconic properties. They're a little bit more dragon than others. And as you can see, you get ability score increase if you're playing those. Lineage boon, which you choose one of the following damage types, and you get resistance to it, and so on. Might of the Fleeting. When you make a weapon attack, you can choose to put extra effort. So you're a buff kobold if you're a Greatkin kobold. We also try to use these subraces to tell little bits of the story of the cultures in Somnus Domina as best we could. A lot of them talk about how things might be in different parts of the world and how these things might come into being. Heckin' Scramble Kobolds. Provisional Panic. By freaking out, you can overcome odds when you make a Strength or Dex save, and the D20 result is 9 or lower. You can treat it as if it was 10. Swarming Instinct. When you take Dash or Disengage, you can make one weapon attack against a single creature you pass as part of the action. Then the rest of them are stuff like that. Good time to go over this. So Winged Kobolds, they have a belabored flight speed. The new rules section of the guide goes over what this means, but just to review, if you see belabored flight speed, it means that it basically flight. You can use your bonus action on your turn to give yourself a fly speed equal to your belabored flight speed, but it goes away at the start of your next turn unless you use your bonus action again. So the idea is that race has trouble flying or they're a bit clumsy. So whenever they're doing so, they need to put a bit of extra effort represented by their bonus action into it. And they have to keep doing it in order to sustain it. That way, that was a bit of a compromise I made so that a lot of races could have flight without it being too busted. Although some of them just have fly. But not all races are built equally. And that's also another part of my design philosophy circa this, is that not all of the races are designed to be as mechanically heavy as others, because that's just not how speciation works. Sometimes they have a lot more stuff that's just warm and fuzzy and meant to make you feel like you made a fun character. And some of them have I conjure a celestial spear and hurl it through the heart of God. They're not all equal. Tell you what, why don't we go back to the reincarnation tables? I'm going to take a couple more questions from the AMAs, and then we'll take another random look at another one of the races. So where are you? All right. How many total legacy traits can you take, and in general, can you take mixed blood legacy traits if you are half-bloods? I answered this effectively already. It's 2. It's 2 between them. If you are half-bloods between two different subraces of the same race? No. So basically I think what you're asking is, like, if you're a kobold and your one parent was a greatkin kobold and the other was a flying kobold, can you take the mixed blood? Can you take the bloodline trait, the mixed blood traits? You would still just choose one subrace, and that would be yours. Unless your GM said otherwise, which they can. By my raw, when they're the same species, one side of the genetics is going to take over the other side in regards to what is mechanically present. So you have to pick from one subrace or the other and cannot take the mixed blood stuff, because kobold is not your secondary race in that case. Can there be a cat beast tribe, or are Feralis the cat beast tribe? They are not. Please note that there is a tiger tribe. Those are cats. Heckin', the Feralis are their own thing. Just cause a thing barks like a cat and quacks like a cat and flies like a cat doesn't mean it's a tabaxi. Some species will look kind of similar to each other, but there might be tiger and cat beast tribe individuals, and then there might be the Feralis. Just like, halflings and gnomes are cut from the same sort of conceptual cloth, but they're not the same thing. They have their own stuff going on, even though a lot of people would just be like, well, they're short humans. They're not short humans. They have resemblances, but they're their own thing. So there's a difference, and that difference, I think, is mechanically respected. In the future, maybe I'll throw a more specific cat tribe in, but for now, you got the tigers. So use the tigers. When I was looking at the mixed traits, I noticed that there was one for the frame built, and it was implied that it was an older edition. What types of mixes can be done with that, like half-half and then later edition of frame built? I'm not certain I follow that question. So frame built, they got a wooden frame, mineral frame in their body that's covered in muscle-like wood fibers that usually they then coat in metal and armor. Though they may look like robots or androids, they are in fact basically wooden golems, living undying tree matter that usually covers itself in a metallic shell. which is why I was so adamant that they're not really Warforged. So let's see. The question was, when looking at the mixed traits, I noticed that there was one. The one was for the frame built, and it was implied that it was a later edition. Implied it was a later edition. I don't quite follow what the question is asking, unfortunately. If you wanna throw that question back in, Lotus, and if I wrap around to it, if you want to clarify, please do. But if the question is, can you mix the frame-built legacy trait or mixed blood traits with each other or what have you, you cannot. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent because I don't know if I know what you're asking. Click. Let's see. To ask about the subrace that plagues my curiosity, Blood Elves. Can you share about their mechanics, designs, and if time permits, culture? All right. let's give this half of a second. So, Blood Elves. Blood Elves. There's a lot of elves. I think elves and Hadaslin have the most subraces. Blood Elves. Lore-wise, they mostly live in the Strike Lands, which is basically fantasy Australia in our setting. Their skin has a reddish hue, pupilless eyes, and they have black birthmarks that resemble tattoos on their body. They are descended from a clan of elves who abandoned the Lord of Seasons, who is basically the emperor/living god of elves in this setting. They're a Lord of Fae that effectively rules over almost all elves from the Fae realm. They abandoned the Lord of Seasons long ago. Their history was lost, and then they reemerged. They had established themselves, a dynasty for themselves, in a section of the Fae realm called the Crimson Lust, and in the Strike Lands. It was asked, I remember, on our Discord if the Crimson Lust was its own plane. It is not. It is a part of the Fae realm, which is, the Feywilds, but ours. It is effectively just another location within it that is far enough away that it is distinct from the Lord of Seasons domain. It is very... how to put this? It'd probably be... culturally. I don't want to just say, imagine mythological, like Chinese mythology, because I don't like just tagging things onto real world cultures, but it would be a very Journey to the West-esque part of the Feywilds in terms of its geography. A lot of red plants, a lot of blood magic sustains that part of the world. Culture-wise, I can't say too much about them right now. I could write about them more in future things, but they are a more might equals right contingent of what was once part of the realm that the Lord of Seasons ruled, and they are now they've established their own reign, and they're doing their own thing and trying to build their own society because they abandoned the somewhat dogmatic rule that the Lord of Seasons has over all Fae. And that is unfortunately all I'm going to go into with this one, because I don't want to put any walls in front of myself that might stop me from writing more creatively about them in the future. What's the most interesting thing that you're excited to talk about with these races and legacy traits? The thing that you personally do not want us to miss. It's the legacy trait system in general. It's just the fact that it affords you customizability. The fact that you can include elements of different races and cross them over and not have to have your half-orc or your half-elf and not have to have permission from the book to use certain combinations. You can just do it. That's the point. You can just do it. You can just feel your way into it and be like, yo, GM, is there any problem with this? And if your GM's a cool dude or dudette or something in between, do them. Then they'll be like, yes, absolutely. You can do that wild thing, and then you do it. And then you move on, and you got to build your own thing. And if you don't want to do a mixed blood character, you can still feel a little bit like, even down to your race, you have your own personal things. You are a bit different. Johnny the Volcano Dwarf is a bit different from Ralph Mundo the Volcano Dwarf, because maybe Johnny's a bit better at seeing in the dark, or maybe Ralph Mundo is a little bit better at walking in the lava. You both feel a bit dudedom. I think dudedom. I really like dudedom. It's not my call, but until the fucking corporate comes down on me, which you're corporate, dudedom. Yeah, heckin', it's just sounds like dudedom. That's fine. I don't see a problem with that, Scylla. I don't see a problem with that. Dudedom. But yeah, you can just do it, and it makes it so that different members of different species, even down to their subrace and like their and whatnot, they feel a little bit different from each other. And so far from what I've seen of people using the system, that really resonates. People seem to really like that. Because everybody wants that little bit of extra control in making their character. Everybody likes feeling like they picked things and they assembled them, and it's a very straightforward, here's a list, it's 6 things, pick 2. Maybe pick from 12, who knows? But it seemed to go over really well, and it's probably the main thing that, like, started me being like, I think we're going to call this a different edition, because everything sort of builds off that mentality. So, just the legacy trade system in general. Alright, I'm going to answer 3 more, then we're going to roll for a different race, and we're going to look at that. Real quick, is there any intentions for exclusive races in the Space Guide? Yes! In fact, I have this up right now. So there are at least 4 unique races that are going to be in it. There's going to be new sub-races for most of the races. How many do I have? Let me do some math. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Almost 50 already. I've already written out almost 50 sub-races between everything, but there's going to be 4 new races that'll be included. That some of them kind of represent old races, some of them don't. They are the Proto-Life, the Sunling, the Galvan, and the Scourge. And I will leave it on the table what exactly those are going to be. For the future, for when the 2025 Kickstarter inevitably starts up. But yes, there's going to be 4 of them, and I'm very excited about them. And each of them will have all of their own sub-races, and all of their own legacy traits, and all of their own usual stuff. What did I say? Did I say 2 more? I forgot how many I said. We'll do 1 more. Could mixed races be made from a magical experiment gone wrong? Yes! In fact, the Reincarnation table, and the fact that it's built to do mixed blood races, absolutely allows for that. You could use those tables to facilitate basically anything. You could use those tables to just facilitate character creation, frankly. You can very much just go in and be like, I don't know what to make. And you could go to the Reincarnation tables and be like, I'm open to making a mixed blood race. So, D100. 25! I'm gonna be a gnome. And the way it would work is you'll notice that each of them are separated into there is a 2-digit, an odd, and an even numbered chance for you to get each of them. If you're doing the mixed blood thing, then the way that you do it is if you roll the odd number, the first one, you just take that as your main race. That's it. It's just your race. If you get the even, so for example, 21 would be just I'm a Fluflin. 22 would be I'm a Fluflin, but I roll again. I'm a Fluflin, but my secondary race is the halfling, because I got a 33. So you can use this to facilitate any random hijinks with mixed races that you want to. Or you could just choose races and absolutely be like, I was involved in some weird magical conflagration, and I was hit by it, and I was just Bartholos the elf, and now I have this dragon arm. And I'm part dragon. Or you were born under, the stars, or the prophecy. So you could do lots of stuff with it. Undead frame built? I'm not here to tell you what you can and can't do. If you want to really be not affected by cure wounds, you be an undead frame build. Alright. Let's roll, and let's look at another race. 67! So that's the Vanquished. That's the Vanquished. These are supposed to be laid back. The Vanquished are an umbrella race for Undead. It's probably one of the most varied of them all because each of the subraces is really its own little race, which is also why there's no heights included for them, because it is just so all over the place. In fact, to the point that there's the former persona trait that they have, where you need to choose another race to be like, this is what the living version of me was. And then you take all of like the appearance traits and whatnot of that one and sort of have to meld them together. They're fun. I think there's not a lot to be said in the base things, because the base ones are basically, deathless traits. It emulates the things that you would expect of people being undead, including advantage on death saving throws, because you're already dead. So it's pretty easy for you to not die. Heckin' necrotic damage resistance. They offer a wide variety of size choices that are meant to be dictated by the race that you choose that you were. Languages, speed, walking speed 30. Their legacy traits are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dark vision, so you get dark vision, so 60 feet of dark vision. They're one of the races that do not have it by rote, because I'm a big advocate of like, let people not see in the dark. In base D&D, like, fucking 4 to 5 races all have dark vision. Make the darkness scary. Make people need torches. Make people think about it. Make people cast sunlight. It's there. It's a spell. Make them cast sunlight and need it. Hacking, so dark vision, deathless evermore. Your maximum hit points cannot be reduced, and you are immune to necrotic damage. Frightful shock. If you score a critical hit on a creature within 30 feet of you, they become frightened of you until the end of your next turn. Furthermore, if you surprise a creature in combat and they start their first turn within 30 feet of you, they are frightened until the start of their following turn. You're spooky. Recalled skill set. Number of times per long rest equal to half your proficiency bonus. When you make a skill check using a skill you are proficient in, you can recall memories from when you were alive or from your extended existence to aid in the execution. You gain a bonus to the skill check equal to your proficiency bonus, unless you already had it twice through something like expertise. The bonus then applies to any skill checks made using the same skill for the next minute, as long as you are performing an action that is similar to the one that you focused on. Undead immunities. You have an advantage on saving throws made to resist being poisoned or charmed and are resistant to poison damage. Unreadable. Due to your appearance or behavior as an undead, be it due to altered facial tics or a lack of expression, you are difficult to read. You gain proficiency and expertise in deception checks. Right? Yes! Passive perception. You don't see in the dark. -5. It's fun. It's a fun thing to navigate. Then they got their mixed blood stuff, which they don't have a lot going on beyond. Some of them have a little blurb here, like this, that points out that for this one, for example, if it's your secondary race, you have to pick a bloodline trait, because it's very important to the race that you choose a subrace, because the subraces define like the shape of the Vanquished race. You also gain the Deathless Traits feature. So if some of them have these extra blocks that are like, here's an extra rule for this particular one if it is your secondary race. So make sure to pay attention to those if you're taking them as a secondary race or whatever. Then the subraces are Amalgamation, which is a Frankenstein's monster sort of, you are grafted together from all sorts of different creatures. Where is it? Shambled body. This is one of the reasons I love the legacy trait system, is it lets me also write features that play into it in the subraces. This one, for example, is like, you must pick 2 other races that are not your primary or secondary, and you have body parts from them, right? So you pick 2 additional legacy traits, one from each of those races, because you inherit those with the body parts. So it's like the legacy trait system lends itself to also being used for things like that. And also, if it's not written into it anywhere, but you can also do things like, let's say that at level 10 in a game, you decide that your character gains enough experience, or they've grown enough that they get another legacy trait. They choose a new one. So like their race levels up, you know? You can choose to do stuff like that. I might in our next book, I might write that in as a encouraged additional rule. Or you could do something for a god. You could Oh, hammering, wonderful. You could cleanse their temple of a great evil, and they grant you the power of your ancestors, and that manifests as another legacy trait. Like, you can use them to do a bunch of extra things. I just think it's fun. When I came up with the idea to try to bridge a bunch of races and realized the work I had ahead of me, I was encouraged to do it basically just because every time I thought about how it would look in the end, it would be just so dynamic. And I'm so happy about it. And I'm really happy about how it ended up, and I really hope people have as much fun with it as I think it's capable. But yeah, the ghoul. Ghoul is kind of a catch-all for, like, you are a type of undead that is overcome with a sense of hunger, and you have to combat that and satiate it. And you actually have a trait that is good and bad. You can consume chunks of bodies to gain temporary hit points and such. Inhabitant. This is one of the more fun ones. You are a spirit that has been bound in a body that's not yours. And the fun thing about this one is you don't even have to be like, oh, I was raised from the dead. Your background could be, I was a totally different guy. I was like a level 20 mage, and then a rival mage sucked out my soul and stuck it in a plant. Or stuck it in this skeleton, and I've lost all of my magical ability, and I want my body back, but I'm stuck in here. Would you be able to take an action to stabilize yourself? Again, asking the fucking thing. I'll answer it. When you take the dying action, you can take an action or bonus action on your turn, but you cannot take the attack action at that time. Nothing stops you. One sec. Let's refer to the new rules section, which is dying. So, being stabilized. So, yeah, I suppose you could. But you'll still have no hit points, so you'll still suffer the dying effects, and you do run the risk of, if something bad, like, beats you up a bit too much at once, then that's it for you. But yeah, no, the amalgamation could definitely... I mean, imagine a scenario where visually, like, they get struck by a powerful attack, the seams that keep their body together begin coming unfurled, and, like, one of their arms, their bigger arms, like, pushes the other on the other side, grabs their shoulder, and holds their body together. That's, like, such a cool image. I love that. Would it make knocking you down for good hard? Sure, but I think permanently killing players also maybe should be a thing that you have to work for if you're really determined. But absolutely. Ghoul, so spirit stuck in a body that can also temporarily possess other creatures. That can, like, extend its influence out. And then skeletal, like Sister was. And then the Undying, which they're someone who has been effectively brought to life. They have no memory of who they were. They're stuck in a suspended state of existence. They're between death and undeath, effectively. And then vampiric, which is the Dhampir. It is for all intents and purposes. But that is them. That's the Vanquished. That's another good example of the stuff that you can do in one of the races in the book. I love Sister's design so much. She looks so good. It's also funny to think about the fact that the cross has no meaning in Somnus Domina, so that's just... She just likes the shape. I'm gonna answer a few more questions. I also think at this point, because I want to be done around 7, by the time I jump back to looking at another race, I would like to lock down questions, I think. So, let me just check to... So, get your questions in now. I see 24 of them. I think I might lock them down in the next couple minutes. Alright. How are you able to make so many new races and still able to make them different enough not to have too much overlap? I don't know. It's just my brain. I focused on what I think it would be fun to do with them. I focused on what I think stops people from playing a lot of them, because people aren't really interested in, like, gnomes and halflings that much, so I was like, what could be added to make them a bit more interesting? Not broken, but interesting. Again, Mr. Ha, I just saw you say repost. If you redeemed the other one, I just haven't gotten to it yet. You don't gotta repost. I'll probably just If I answer it and then I see the repost, I'll just click it as answered. I don't know. I just inspiration for a bunch of them, wanting to make stuff. I like most things I make. It's okay, Mr. Ha. I made what I would enjoy playing and what I've seen other people enjoy. Almost my entire design philosophy comes down to reacting to what gets people excited, and what gets me excited, and hoping that other people feel the same way. So I build things with a level of complexity and with features that kind of appeal to that mentality. So I think that's basically it. I did struggle with some of them. Like I'll be honest, like the goblins and kobolds, I feel could have been a bit more inspired, but I do like where they ended up. But I would like to give them a bit more to chew on in the future. I think that my strength in this lies in making new races, like especially when I made the Primordia and even some of the replacement races. I do feel like I unmoored myself. I've been saying unmoored a lot lately. I unmoored myself a little bit from limitations the original had, and I really was excited to do that. But yeah, my mentality, obviously there's like math and mechanical stuff and structural rules that are just ingrained in my brain at this point, like way to keep things bounded. But what I make and the tone of what I make comes from what I would want to use, what would get me excited to play. And I just go from there. Sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. Do you plan on adding more races as you expand with more books and PDFs? Answered that basically earlier with the thing, but yes, absolutely. Every time I release a book, I always want it to include, especially now that I kind of know my limits, I want them always to build upon the systems we have. I'm going to try with every book I put out that has a substantial page count to always give a few new options for all of the existing races and whatnot if I can, as long as it doesn't feel contrived. I want new schools of magic, new NPCs, the implications of new adventures that you could run with them. I want to give people the tools to be like, oh, here is the complete idea for a space adventure. I just need to figure out the sinew, the story that lets me do it. I want to do that. So yeah, every time we make a new book, I'm going to try to have new races, a new class at least in each one of them if I can manage that, but I won't push myself on that if I don't have a good idea. And new subraces, new spells, new artifacts. What do astral elves look like, and how do they differ from other elves? Well, that's in the guide. That's under astral elves. Mysterious and distant, the astral elves are a things of legend. I can read what I wrote. In the final ages of the old world, a society of elves fled into the cosmos in search of a greater purpose. And when Somnus Domina was devastated and the old gods cast down, the elves of space lost their only connection to the world. So basically there'll be more about it in the timeline in the book whenever you get to it. The astral elves are a species of elves. They were already sort of attached to space. They already had like spacefaring tech and whatnot in the old world. But when the Grand Primaries hit and the apocalypse that formed our world began, they took their civilization and they ollied out. They left. They were like, to space we go. And then they stayed up there because they found some stuff. They found some things that got them interested, and the book I'm working on right now is going to talk more about the stuff they found. But they have a thriving society, a spacefaring society. The general term that I'm going to be using for a lot of the space stuff is exolunar, which means basically inhabiting the space beyond Somnus Domina's moons. Exolunar stuff will be, and exolunar vessels and whatnot will be like the jargon that will define space stuff. But how they look... A wide variety of appearances, but they typically have a pinkish red or dark skin that is spotted with shimmering freckles that resemble starlight. So, you know, little pinkish, a little bit alien. Oh, no, totally. All right. And I was almost tempted to redo them as their own separate race for the upcoming book, but I think I'm just going to expand on them. I might make variant subraces for the astral elves, since they'll be so important in the new book. I might make a few different, like, sub-subraces to pick from. But I'm deciding whether or not that idea is contrived or not. Alrighty. I am going to, at this point, lock redemptions. So we're going to get through a few more questions, jump to a race, look at it, do a few more questions, and then do up the remaining questions. So questions are locked. With the pantheon, do you find races typically look to worship a specific deity? In our setting, gods function a little bit differently than they do in things like the realms. The Eidolons are the main gods, the 12, now 8 gods that kind of direct mankind and loom over it and basically regulate everything, stop all of the divine apocalypses that loom over your head at any given time. That's them, and culture as a whole tends to worship them kind of in a more general sense than specific gods. But then lesser deities, they appeal to ways of life and thought more so than they appeal to races. Like, gods tend to be the gods of protection, of moonlight, of safe travel, of invention and whatnot. They tend to ascribe themselves to ways of life, cultural influences, and to forces of nature more so than they are to gods. Some of them are worshipped more by a particular race because they share it. For example, Mortuus is probably worshipped a lot more by, like, Dragonkin because they are a Dragonkin that became a god. When Fluflin, a lot of Fluflin pay fealty to Chen Karagosh because they have a resemblance to them. They are a goddess of Fluflin in a lot of senses. But I try to avoid the trappings of, here is the orc god. Not saying that that's a bad thing and won't come up in the future, but I try to avoid being too, like, here is the mono choice for a race, because I just don't jive with that. The society that we built in Somnus Domina is very interweaving. Cultures tend to lean into each other a lot, so it kind of Hadaslin with Vestius, but also, like, not necessarily. The gods that tend to be worshipped specifically by certain races tend to be ones that are taking advantage of them, though. Like, there may be Hadaslin, there may be, like, a fiendish dark god that tries to appeal specifically to Hadaslin because they are lost and they need to be directed and they want to take advantage of their isolation. When, like, Gotham, the god of undeath, appeals to, Vanquished probably might be drawn to them, but also not necessarily. So I would say no. As on the whole, races do not typically look towards a specific deity. They probably look towards those that they have access to knowledge about, which can be important based on where you are, and those that appeal to their way of life. Was the Hano race made for Hayden when they joined, or was it a concept you had in mind beforehand? Well, yokai, in the somewhat programming-based world that I was building at the time, because I always intended for Magic to kind of have a codified underpinning in the idomantic web, I always wanted to go down the angle of, like, yokai exist, and they are kind of glitches. They're bugs that have yet to be worked out in the system that give life to forces and emotional forces that shouldn't be given life. I hadn't created the Hano at the time. I don't think, if I'm remembering clearly. The Hano definitely is something I solidified for Hayden. And then later, like a lot of things, it's kind of like with Carrie. I had kind of an idea for something similar to the Kitsadria, but I made it what it was because Carrie wanted to play something similar to it. And I honestly think that my best work has come from occasions where my friends have been like, I want to do this thing, and I've made it for them, and then expanded on it. Because again, seeing what gets people excited gets me excited. So the Kitsadria and the Hano I love so much because they were made based off the desires of my friends and my players. So, yeah. Were the Nephilim an exception? Oh, I know. I always had the Nephilim pinned down. I mean, the Nephilim were being mentioned as early as, like, the session 20s, right? Like, they were already being noted as the ones that built the vaults and whatnot. Again, no, the Nephilim, from start to finish, they always were what they are now. They were a fundamental building block in even the earliest stages of building Somnus Domina. Same with the frame built, but I was stuck in this place where I didn't want to I didn't know if I had the capacity to make content the way that I am now. Obviously, I had no concept of how I make it now, but... So I was kind of like, I had this idea for this species and didn't really want to use the Warforged, but I was like, I will let the Warforged occupy this space. And then once we started separating from the OGL and I really started coming into my own, I leaned back into my earlier notes and I started building things up to be kind of what I wanted them to be, which is why we had a admittedly kind of sudden, but I think properly executed period where it's like, actually, they're called the frame build. They've just forgotten that. Best way to build a monkey race. I have no extended comments on that, beyond that I maybe am working on something like that. Sort of. It's not the Hadozi, kinda, for the exolunar stuff. Is there a race legacy trait that you yourself want to see played in the upcoming games? Oh, well, I mean, there's so many. I want to see someone brave enough to play an Ilthrak Yar, which I will... Are bug people? I want to see a player brave enough to be like, I want to make that work. Because they are one of the monstrous species. They're definitively, like a lot like kind of kobolds and whatnot, they're definitively like 9 times out of 10 when you bump into them, they're gonna try to murder you, because most of them are extra-planar monsters. So I want to see the person who's willing to try to play that. Or, actually, it's a lot like the Trilton, which is the blanket race for tree people. And this is kind of for you, Scylla, if you're still out there. I would love it if in the future, I would love to see somebody try to play a Wild Dryad. The Wild Dryad's whole concept is they are, in our setting, a Dryad fully merges with the tree that it's bound to and, like, becomes part of nature again, and it creates the next generation by dropping like acorn-like seeds onto the ground that then create an artificial body for themselves, and they are like proto-dryads. They are dryads that have yet to nail themselves to a tree and location. They're young, conceptual dryads. And they can wander about, and the whole concept, like this is just one example of them, is that their body is fake. It is like a hard light projection, basically like a construct that they've made around their core, which in this image you can actually see their forehead has a little glow to it. The idea there is that like the seed that is them is in there, and that's their actual body. It's just the seed. And I would love to see someone try to play one of them sometime. You know, or a fungal form. Play a mushroom person. Be a mushroom! Be a mushroom! Yeah? More questions, let's do it. I'm gonna knock us down until we have 10 questions, and then I'm gonna look at another race, and then we'll pop back for the remainder. Click. Could you tell us of the possible concept ideas you had about the DGRs or possible unique DGRs that was scrapped? I will not, because I'm implementing a lot of my dropped ideas into the next thing, where more DGRs will be in the exolunar material, and also other types of frame units. Like, the Astral Elves have their own mechs, effectively. Frame units are the general term for them all, but there will be more about them there, so I don't want to give too much away up front about that. When revising the Fearbog, did you draw inspiration from the, I believe, Irish Gaelic inspiration of the Ancestry? Kinda, but not a lot, really. I'm more just focused on this idea of bestial giant kin who were very attuned to nature. I don't think I leaned too hard into their real-world mythology. Unfortunately, I sort of pick and choose my battles regarding where I do and don't do that. All right. Are there any plans to expand upon these options in future books, like options for space-related races in the space book, or I've already answered this effectively. The answer is yes. Wide yes. There will be more stuff. There will be space stuff. Done. Also, I recently played a lot of Black Myth Wukong. I beat it just the other night, and I'm not gonna lie, a little bit of imagery from that game seeped into some of the stuff I'm doing. Okay. When designing new races, do you consider their fashion or how their clothes might differ due to their extra limbs or varying vessels of hairiness, or just let the artist come up with their outfits? No, I'm very hands-on. There is some stuff that I'm like, I want this to look generally like this. But I'm very hands-on. I'm very specific about how I want new species and new races to look. When things are more monstrous, like for NPCs, sometimes I'm a bit more like, I need this general vibe, please run with it. But I'm very particular about how the race art and whatnot all looks. How different are the Hadaslin? I don't know how to spell the new name, so I apologize. Compared to how WotC changed them? Hard question to answer. They do a lot of the same things. Boom. But they can be small or medium. They still kind of come from the Hells. So they still have, there's certain things I kept, like the Cursed Legacy and whatnot. Like they still have, their ability to get magic and whatnot. I did include in, there's the Crystal Hadaslin stuff, which is its own, like, alternative planes influencing the cursed energy that creates what they are. A lot of it's still the same mechanically. The legacy traits, I think, where a lot of it changes, where you can just choose to have Devil Sight. You can be resistant to fire or psychic damage. You can have wings. You can have this built-in so many times per short or long rest smite attack. A lot of the spell choices I changed to match our new spells and whatnot. Most of the original subraces are represented in one way or another, but like you can be pretty fiendish now. You can choose to have them be pretty scary. Look at this big old tailed and winged boy. Heckin', there's like an unlocked creative versatility in choosing what sort of fiendish you are. But I tried to include like a wide array of different looking ones. Try to be like more neutral, more military, more heroic. But yeah, it's kind of more of a blanket for like fiendish individuals than it is just one species now. And I almost feel, and then, you know, there's the old art from the Crystal Tiefling book, which, Kem does such good work, doesn't she? Heckin' Aethermancy is so good. That remains one of my favorite pieces of art we've ever had done. Oh, that too. Oh, they're so good. Yeah, the differences are just largely in flavor. Why'd I put the shark people in with the reptile people? I don't know, man, because it was the place that they go. Sometimes it's that simple. You know? Sometimes a blanket, or sometimes an umbrella extends a bit far. And sometimes you don't want to make an entirely new race for what is only a couple of features when you already have the swimming animal race. Alrighty. Click. What's your favorite race change from WotC content to your own? Inaritos. I really unlocked and nailed down how sort of angelic and scary they're meant to be and how much of a celebration they should be. I think the Inaritos are probably the main thing. They do a lot of the same stuff mechanically, but people who watch Princes, for example, have seen Agisai. Like, they can just fly normally. They can summon wings. They can fly without having to only do it for a minute a day. It is belabored flight speed unless you take a legacy trait to advance it, and then instead of giving them the you're a good angel, a bad angel, or a mean angel subraces, the subraces are kind of based around like the trajectory of your destiny, like the cosmic reason that you have this celestial trait about you that made you an Inaritos. They're all based on that, and they sort of serve as this impulse that the character should have in their subraces, which is why they're all named after like clarity, discovery, glory, lust, and also a couple of them are like a bit like glory are a bit more violent and whatnot, because celestial things are not necessarily squeaky clean do-gooders in general. So like, heckin', also, you know, we have got this art, which is also from one of our lovely artists, which heckin', what up? How you doing? Anyways. But then you got this. You got biblically accurate angel man there to pass judgment. I think the Inaritos, aesthetically, is my favorite thing that I changed over. Be not afraid. Be more afraid. All right. How many more do we got before we hit 10? Another 4? This might be a bit off the theme, but you mentioned how what came before the current world is no longer the Forgotten Realms. Are there still distinct gods before the Eidolons and those elemental things, and can you tell us anything about them? There is a world, the old world, that existed before the cosmic teardrop fell and basically shattered the system of godhood that was in place before it. Certain deities and entities are left over from it, and it's obvious, and we've talked about it, that originally, back when I was trying to softball the setting, the idea was that basically the Forgotten Realms got apocalypsed and it became this. Creatively, I've gone back on that, and it is now what the idea was in my head long ago before I decided to run it as a setting. Maybe someday I'll talk about what was in the old world and how it worked. Maybe someday I'll make a setting guide that was about that and was about like that system of things. But for now, I think it's probably best I don't expand on that as much. Beyond that, the world had a different divine logic before the cosmic teardrops fell, and the cosmic teardrops basically reprogrammed how the divine in the universe works. And all the old gods were either pushed into hibernation, killed, destroyed, or became something else. However, there's no longer the Forgotten Realms, and if moving forward, if any aspects of the old world ever does come into our games, they're going to be unique entities. Basically, it was an entirely different system. Yeah, it was 5.18, right? What is your favorite 5.19 original race or subrace to make? If you can't pick one, then a few. I mean, Cassandria is the easiest answer because it's kind of like the inception of the creativity of the setting. Like, it was the first major thing. It and the Sword Saint were like the testing grounds where I learned to write properly and sharpen my skills around, because like I was very messy, and arguably I'm still messy in a lot of ways, but I was very messy when I began, and they are the things that I think by making and revising and testing, I developed a sense of like what was good, like what worked in terms of mechanics and whatnot. And also just the setting is cute. I also like pointing out the fact that they're fox people, but they're, they got big old rabbit ears. Because they're not exactly fox people. Yeah. It's what Final Fantasy XIV did to 1.0. I mean, you're not wrong. It was a lot more cataclysmic, but you're not wrong. It was very much like, well, the old MMO didn't work. Drop a moon on it. But yeah, the Cassandria. Absolutely, that's my favorite original thing. I do really like the Nephilim. The Copy Hado have a firm place in my heart, but it's the Cassandria. I mean, I did write a whole 130-page book about him. With all the changes to the races, does that mean the highest standard members will be updated? And if so, what changes will be made? Yes. When we come back into Vestige, we will be going back and rebuilding those characters with the new content from the ground up. In terms of their items, in terms of their stats and whatnot. So they'll feel a bit different when we get there. Some people might not be able to do the same things they did. Some people might be able to do the old things better. As for what changes will be made, I cannot speak to that off the top of my head. I do not have that in my mind at this very moment. But I know Aviana's going to change a lot. Vogan's going to change a lot. Well, we'll see. But they will be different. Click. All right. We got 10 left, so I'm going to go back to the reincarnation tables. Oh, hey, what's up?
Hi.
Hi.
Figured I'd come chill.
Okay.
I was just watching anyway, so I figured I might
Yeah.
as well be here.
I'm gonna roll my dice. I'm gonna choose one more race to look at and go over the stuff of. Because we're coming up on 6:36. Yeah, one more race. We'll nail down those last 10 questions. And then we'll be done. Because my mother, who I haven't seen in 5 years, is flying in. I thought they were flying in on Saturday, and it turns out I was wrong. They're flying in later, and I got to meet them at the airport. So 66. The Trilton. We already kind of looked at them. 92. That's a roll again. Ah! Dropped a dice on the floor. 22. The Flyn. All right, you convinced me.
That makes sense.
The Flyn. Depending on how you run them, the probably most prone, I would imagine, to being mixed race, because if you do a Flyn human, you can make Jessica Rabbit. The Flyn. Bunny people, who maybe came from space. No one knows. Let's see. So we got the usual information: creature type, life expectancy, national alignment, planar origins, etc., etc. They are bunny people. They're little guys, usually on the shorter side. And it's also good that we're doing this because it's also one of the ones I picked for my icon for the stream. Let's see. Brave Soul. You have advantage on saving throws made to resist or stop being frightened. If you are frightened and fail a saving throw made to stop, you can use your reaction to roll a d6 and add it to the roll. So they are really good at saying, nuh-uh, I'm not scared, you are. Moon Jump. As a bonus action, you can jump a number of feet equal to your proficiency bonus times 5, as long as your movement speed is greater than 0. When you do so, you can leap as high as half that distance to leap over obstacles, and the vertical height you leap is not counted when considering fall damage. This movement does not provoke opportunity attacks. I think the main thing to note about that is you're not taking extra movement. You can move and move your 30 feet and then moon jump to go that distance if you wish to.
That's hilarious. I was just talking about how like exceptions to the original movement rules are sometimes really, really fun and good. Like literally during Wits and Grits earlier today.
That's so funny. But yeah, they can like run their 30 feet and then be like, you know what, also? Jump 20 feet.
Boing.
Boing. Heck in. You're small or medium. Those are their two main things. I only gave them a couple of them because Brave Soul is unlocked in that it doesn't have a limit, so it can be used whenever. And Moon Jump is actually like a big speed bonus. So I figured that's all they really needed. Legacy traits. Theirs are pretty quick. Dasher. You can dash as a bonus action. Luck of the Rabbit. When you fail a dexterity check or saving throw, you can choose to use your reaction to roll a d20. Use it in place of the first one. One Eye Open. You're a light sleeper. You cannot be surprised in combat. Prepared. You add your proficiency bonus to your initiative rolls, and that's on top of other stuff that gives it. You could, in 5.19, and this is an intentional exploit, stack a lot of things to give yourself the most initiative. Like, there's a lot of things that you can stack that are like add your proficiency bonus to initiative like 4 times. And the reason I don't care is because the only benefit to that is you go first, and that's it. And I don't really...
Like a couple rogues that would benefit from that, but not much else.
And if they want to spec into that, then good for them.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, it would,
go up.
as soon as you focus on being like, I want to do one thing good, why stop?
Yep. In the Discord server, I remember some people were talking about how you could really break... You could get like a 30 passive perception under a lot of these rules if you basically put all of your feats and choices toward it and take specific races. And I'm kind of like, yeah.
And
and so if you decide that your existence revolves around that, cool.
That's Avelios. Avelios had 26 by the end of 2.
It's like, if you want to build your character to have dragon levels of passive perception because that's what you want to do, then do it. There's like, again, what's the consequence? That you're not surprised? That's the thing that you're building towards. Like, that's the thing you do. Plus, usually none of it ever becomes much of an issue until, like, tier 4 anyways. And by that point,
it's also, if
who
nothing's
cares?
sneaking up on the party, like, it's surprisingly rare how few things try and sneak up on the players. There are things that do it, but it's not actually that common. But when it does happen, this motherfucker's ready for it.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
which I think is fine. I think that there's some
the
things...
secret exits and stuff. Cool.
Yeah.
As a DM, I want them to find them anyways.
Right? Oh, there's some stuff in the last Gilligan's Grave that you guys just didn't look at that I was like, no, go back.
Yeah, right.
Touch it. But okay, that subraces. So theirs are, again, I feel like I could have done more, but I was at a point in creation when I was writing these that I was like, I've done so many. Like I had exceeded like 110 at this point, and I was like, should I stop? So it only has the 4. There's the Grassin, which is I think the one I've seen people taking the most. It feels like people have decided the Grassin is like the default. No, Leafly, sorry. I think Leafly's the one people have basically been like, this is the default Fluflin. They advantage on saves made to resist being or stop being charmed, cannot be magically put to sleep, only requires 4 hours of rest to gain a long rest, and they can turn invisible for a short amount of time, so many times per long rest. Moonfoot, which are the ones that maybe came from the moon, who knows. They can add their proficiency bonus to passive perception as long as another feature is not allowing it. Disadvantage on perception checks does not lower their passive perception. So even if they can't see in the dark, or even if they have like disadvantage on perception checks, it doesn't affect their passive. And then dark vision, just to make sure that doesn't happen, I guess. Although dim light still. And then Wild Rider, crazy bunnies. They live in dangerous terrains. They're looking to get away. They're less bunnies. They're more hares. When you reduce a creature to 0 hit points or use score a critical hit, you do not provoke opportunity attacks until the end of that turn. When you stand from prone, you leap quickly to your feet, costing only 5 feet of movement. And when you are knocked prone, you may use your reaction to immediately stand. And Thunderfoot, when you use your moon jump, you can choose to target a creature within 5 feet of the space you are landing in, and you strike that creature, forcing them to make a strength save. On a failure, they're knocked prone and take bludgeoning damage equal to 1d6 multiplied by half your proficiency bonus, plus your strength modifier. So, your moon jump becomes a rider kick. And those are some of them. And then the Grassin, which is... you can double your movement speed until the end of your turn. Once on your turn, you can do that a number of times per long rest equal to half your prof bonus. Poison resistance, resistance to poison damage, and survival against all. You're proficient in the survival skill as long as it is feasible in the environment you are in, and you can automatically find enough food and water to feed yourself for a day by taking 1 hour to search. That's the Fluflin. Look at them go. Let's nail down these last 10 questions. All right. What inspired the creation of the Kaijo? Boredom and Godzilla, mostly. The thought of how...
you really had a big Godzilla kick. I mean, I say kick as though you're not...
Head.
As though you'd finished, yeah.
As though my favorite hoodie isn't a Godzilla -1 hoodie. Fucking love Godzilla. No, it's also just the idea of early on. The first version of the Kaijo was a mess. To be fair, when I made it the first time around, I was just too hasty trying to make it.
That's kind of all things too. I think rough drafts.
Yeah, it came a lot from the place of like same idea as a Dragonborn, but dinosaurs, because dinosaurs are cool. Everyone loves dinosaurs. So it very much came from a place of like, I think this would be a neat thing to have. I threw this in feedback for the playtest. While I was looking at the birdfolk with my buddy, I noticed that it can fly unhindered by medium and heavy armor, unlike vanilla races. It seems every race with flight can fly with heavy armor, actually. Is this intended? Yeah. I think that limitation is unnecessary. I don't think the game gains anything by being like you're wearing heavy armor so you can't fly. I don't think there's any fun interactions in that, so...
Yeah, as a DM, you can also try and rationalize around if they have the proficiency in heavy armor, they probably had to train in flying in it.
Yep.
Like, you just, as long as you make it work for your brain, it should be fine.
Yep. I definitely... It's also because, like, heavy armor, like, particularly heavy ones... Am I misremembering that there's a strength requirement?
Some of them, yes.
Yeah, so like if
you need 18, I think.
If unwieldiness is built into the armor, then just be like, well, then if you're strong enough to beat that, then you're good. All right.
Yeah, there's a few modules that have things like that because I remember we had this in Net 19 before. We were like, do you have disadvantage on certain like swimming checks when you're in heavy armor? The answer is no, unless a module or something says you do. Yeah. There's nothing natively built into them that causes that.
Or unless your GM decides it's appropriate in the moment.
Yeah.
The next question is, can we see the Minotaur race? Here they are. The Minotaur.
That's a fun follow-up. I remember seeing can we get a Minotaur race? It's like, can we see the Minotaur race?
Oh, jeez. But Minotaur race. Bam! Minotaurs. They're another one I'd like to move, like to expand on more in the future. They were one of the later ones I decided to put in, but Minotaurs!
Yeah, they're quite popular. Like, more than you'd expect.
Yeah, I don't quite have time to go over all their stuff, but I guess if you want to, I'll you know what? I'll zoom in slightly.
Yeah, little slow scroll. You can take a look at the VOD.
Yeah, here I am, scrolling kind of slowly on the Minotaur. That way, if you want to, you can stop and you can check out the Celestial Minotaur mommy for a second. Look at her go.
Ugh.
Look at her.
What a cutie.
What a cutie. The Sphito, basically the Celestial Minotaurs are one of my... That's another thing I'd love to see somebody play and rationalize is the Sphito Minotaur, just because it's neat.
I mean, literally all of your new races. Like, I said about the bug one, but honestly, any of the major ones that you're like, I wish people would play this, I'm like, Eric. Eric loves all of those things. He really loves exotic races, and those are like capital E exotic races.
With mixed blood races having primary and secondary in their hierarchy similar to dominant and submissive genes in biology, I don't like to think of it that way. I think that the primary and secondary language as language is just there so you can mechanically differentiate one has more influence. I would not like to propose that in world there is anything
dominant characteristics.
Yeah, I leave that to you guys to have fun with. It's just not a thing where fun does not emerge from that level of specificity, so I leave that to whoever's making their stuff. I do wonder something personally. Is there a reason the Ilthrek Yars are plain humanoid and not humanoid plus monstrosity like the three green? Because they're not. It's unfortunately a question that doesn't have an interesting answer. I could see you making them a monstrosity, but I don't know. From their perspective, humans are the real monstrosities. Although that's a tough sell, looking at them.
I mean, hear me out. Ilthrek Yar, folk hero background, and you're just Common Rider. Or like a Beetleborg.
Ilthrek Yar, secondary human, so you like have their qualities, but you look kind of humanoid, so you just look like a Common Rider.
Yeah.
Ilthrek Yar aesthetics, human shape, Common Rider. All right, again, that's that one. Did any of the players or NPCs from Vestige cause some subraces to be created, like Vogan or Quintus, for example? Not really, not in any direct way, because Vogan was just a basic old hobgoblin originally.
Yeah, Vogan caused a class kind of to be made.
Yeah,
he's a blue metal fighter originally, right? And then
and then Sword Saint emerged from that. Yeah, Vogan was, I think if I recall correctly at the time, hobgoblin. There wasn't even subraces. It was just hobgoblin.
Just hobgoblin. Yep.
So we're gonna have to figure out which one works best for him whenever we go back to it. Which probably
be cool. Giving him more stuff would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Spencer also seems pretty excited to try out new content these days. Aviana kinda, because I mentioned earlier the Hanyo really emerged from it. So like the Avian Hanyo was definitely made with Aviana in mind. But I mean, originally the Hanyo was made entirely for them. Quetzadria was kind of made specifically for Lexi, sort of.
So no, but also yes.
Yeah. So kinda no. Not really directly, in any case, I don't think. We have 3 questions left. Any race you were not able to add to this book? There's a bunch, because like if I had just unlimited time, I would have done equivalents to like the Bugbear, the Githyanki, yeah, the Book of Races, the Book of People, Centaurs, I guess, even though I hate centaurs. There's people that like them. Centaurs are stupid.
They cause a lot of like logistical problems just by their inherent nature. I think they totally have places in certain campaigns, but like any campaign that involves ladders, you start asking questions. And while people find fun solutions,
can I be honest? Like, not even mechanically, not even in D&D. I think centaurs are stupid. they're just dumb.
Fair.
Like, I respect that people like them, but it's every time I've ever seen a centaur pop up and everything, I've been very like, oh, here we go, fucking the horse people. Ah.
I've always put centaurs kind of mentally away in the same place I put like unicorns. Like they aren't necessarily something I've ever considered a race that should be a lot of, or like they show up in cities and stuff. They're a thing that there's like 12 of them in the woods, and they guard a tree that they give a fuck about because it keeps the whole forest alive or something, and they want you to die because you're near their good tree. And you know, they're like supposed to be this kind of fey-ish strange beings. So as a race, they're kind of in the same way that I think you're very disinterested in them. They don't spark joy for me either.
Yeah, they're I don't know. They're like proto Lord of the Rings. But yeah, next question. I'll probably make them in the future to like try to make them fun for people that want to use them. But fuck them, they're dumb. If you have fun playing it, I'm very happy for you. They're stupid. And that's just my opinion. I don't have to like everything. Will additions of new races and subclasses include like their little number, or subraces I assume you mean, include their numbered attack into Reincarnation? Yes. I will try to do that. In books that add new things, I will try to include an updated subrace table, and I'll try to include like where they'll be on the Reincarnation table. You'll actually notice I very intentionally, because every one of them, I only did 2 for each to facilitate the mixed blood thing, but you'll notice that 69 through 99, nice, is empty. There's like, what, 15 races worth of space that can be plugged into the main table because of that. And I did that very intentionally, give us room to add new things. And if we ever release more than 15 new races,
cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like subtables you could do, not like for anything, but like who's casting might affect it.
Yeah. Break out the D1000. Here we go. Again, and then with these, usually I'll use D10s for all of these, but we can definitely in future books like include these to add in the new subraces. I'll make a decision when we get there as to whether or not that bloats page counts too much, but it seems to me to be something people would want. So I'm inclined to include it. Because I think that one of the things that is annoying about the Reincarnation spell is that it came out, gave you a specific list of basically the core options, and then every book that came out after it that added new options, Reincarnate was just like, well, I guess the spell doesn't consider them. Yeah. You have to make your own table or find like a table somebody made, and every time a new book comes out, it throws everything into chaos.
Which is why a weird fantasy parallel to the Great Replacement theory. They're gonna kill us all and turn us into elves.
And that's why I also went the extra step in this book to be like, not only is there the main race table, but there's also the subrace tables. Because, I mean, if you're having the fun of rolling up a new thing, then I think you want to maybe have that randomness from start to finish.
And if you don't, the tables, the Reincarnate table is the best table. It's the one that most players see and immediately understand and are like, ooh.
Yep.
Loot tables theoretically are interesting, but because we don't know what's on them, we're like, whatever, who cares?
Yep. All right. So that should answer that question. Where's my mouse? There it is. Final question. Sorry for the general question as someone starting out new to D&D but loving your work. Which of your books would you recommend getting first? This one.
Yeah, 100%.
These 2 books, but specifically the main setting guide, were made to act as the starting point for all of our content. Like, everything we released prior was retuned or re-included or whatnot, and this book was made with the assumption that you haven't read any of them. So this one, absolutely, which you can pre-order. You can't see it, but I'm doing a stupid pointing up at the top of the screen thing. You can go to the link at the top of the screen. I'll try to remember to put one in the description of the video. I think I forgot last time. You can go to that, and you can still pre-order this book to get it sent out in the same shipment as the Kickstarter. If you don't want to get both books, just this one is fine. You do not need to get Risk and Reward. That's honestly more of a GM thing, because it's, the bestiary and treasury and whatnot. So if you just want to get the main book, then just get the main book. That would do it. And honestly, I've had some people that are new to D&D that I know, like IRL, who are at tables where they've only played like one campaign, opening up the book, understanding it, and liking everything in it, getting really excited about it. So I'm very confident that even though 5.19 has some extra quirks, that it is accessible to new players. And I'm very happy about that. But with that, we're just about exactly at 2 hours. Well, we're at 1 hour and 45 minutes, but we're almost at 7. So I think, for this week, that is where I'm going to stop. Heckin', next week, if I do this, which I might not do it next week, but next time we do this, we might take more of a look, probably continue on our journey through the classes, probably do, revisit the Inscriptor and the Sword Saint and the Petal Knight, and then after that, maybe start going through subclasses for a bunch of other races. But it'll be also good at some point to do one of these specifically for the new rules that 5.19 adds, because they're all pretty easy to integrate, but it would be good to go over them.
It'd be fun. It's also kind of a place to give the elevator pitch to a house rule, which I think is really useful for DMs who are reticent, because that's all of them, honestly.
It's true.
We've had that talk a million times. DM's like, new.
With that, people that are watching just from YouTube, we're going to take off. Make sure to come back and join us for one of these in the future if you want to. I enjoy doing these. I was very happy to be here and to go over the races and legacy traits and whatnot. And if you are playing at a table and your GM doesn't quite understand how they work, link him this video and tell him to pay attention mostly to the start of it, where we went over how it works. It's 2 legacy traits, even if you're mixed blood. 2 legacy traits. All the changes with mixed blood is that you have a different list you can pick from, but it's 2, no matter what. All right. YouTube, we'll see you next week.